So it's very nice to be here. As a clinician, when I was practicing for 25 years, I worked with Natural Partners as one of the suppliers for my dispensary, and I came to Gaia about 2 years ago. Oh, thank you. Or 3 years ago, actually, to do their medical education. One of the things that I want to really bring home today is, like, if I could transport you all to the farm, I would. And I would give that lecture there at the farm. But I can't. So what I've done is I've filled this lecture with pictures of the farm. Every herb you see is going to be grown on the farm or collected, wildcrafted at the farm. And I'm really here to talk to you about why we do these things at Gaia and what, you know, Gaia stands for. And really, if we're going to make a really good product, we have to have really good ingredients to start with. And one of the things that I've learned just recently, I've spent the last year in formulation. And with formulation, you have to look at raw materials. And when you start looking at raw materials, holy cow, not all raw materials are made the same. And if you don't ask the right questions, you can be quite surprised when your material shows up for production. One of the things that just happened to me recently is I went to Expo, and I went with our raw materials supplier and visited all of the suppliers that were at Expo that we do business with. And almost 90% of those suppliers told me that nobody asks questions like Gaia does. Nobody wants to know where it came from, or whether or not there's 2% maltodextrose in there, or whether or not, you know, there's a pesticide or a heavy metal. Gaia asks those questions all the time. It makes it hard for our suppliers, but we don't back down, because if we don't have really good material, we don't get what we want for the outcome. And that is part of what has driven Gaia to actually get the farm. So seed to shelf is important. It's not just about saying that. You can go out and get lots of people to seed and grow for you, but what happens with seeding, what happens with the way you plant it, how much water you give, all of these things will make a huge difference in the outcome of the product. So for us, we decided if we control the seed, that's even buying seed stock. And when we went to get our holy basil, we went to India to a very specific variety of holy basil. And when we lost our seed stock, because we gather our seed year to year for many of our plants, when we lost our holy basil seed stock 2 years ago, we thought that we were not going to be able to find it again. And we found a tiny little seed bank in India who still had that strain of seed. So we were able to get the seed going again. So we save our seed on the farm, as well as grow the seed out so that we can get our materials. And that means that we have to grow it, we harvest, you know, our science piece, we'll look at that today, production and shelf. And farming is huge. It's not just about sticking the plant in there and harvesting and when it's ready. There's all kinds of dynamics that go on with that. We're 350 acres in in western North Carolina. The part of the reason that Rick chose North Carolina was because of the fact that its biodiversity is huge. The biodiversity of plants then gives the ability to farm more varieties. We farm about 25 to 30 species. That's actually quite a bit in that 350 acres. You're looking right there at one of our holy basil fields. That's about a 6-acre field that you're looking at in full bloom there. You can come down to the farm and see 10, 12, even a 15-acre field of blooming echinacea in the summer. And because it is so biodiverse, we're able to grow these species that we chose to grow here very well. And we grow quite a bit. Like we grow all our own valerian, our own scutellaria. We grow a lot of holy basil. You'll see some of these pictures, the chamomile. So in the Gaia Farm, what happens here is that we have to plant out. We have a huge greenhouse that right now it's filled with goticola and holy basil and little echinacea and little calendula seedlings, and then they'll be planted out. You can see here we use a wide bed process. The machine will actually come through here and plant the plants. Oh, I got a little right along these troughs right here. There'll be 4 men on the machine planting them in. They actually work under a tarp, so all you see, the hands come out because it's so warm and sunny that they need the shade of the tarp. It's quite interesting to watch them. There's our valerian field, one of our valerian fields, and this is a great story of something we learned from growing. the thing is that plants can teach us. They can teach us about wellness. They can teach us about what we might actually, use them for, or how they might grow. And watching them, when you look at valerian, now the man who started the farm, Rick Scalzo, he lives on the farm. He walks on the farm every single day with his dogs, and he watches. And from watching, he's learned many things about plants. For instance, watching the hawthorn, he actually noticed that the hawthorn gets a little bit of a pink line along the top of the petals. He took that into the lab and found that the flavonoids in the hawthorn at this time, before the bud actually opens, are 5 times the amount that when the bud opens. So we harvest prior to, as soon as we see that pink. And that came from him taking the buds up to the lab day after day over a 2-week period to look at the phytochemical profile of what the plant was showing. In valerian, what we found was that when we planted out the field, most of it's white flowered. There were pink flowers in that. And these seeds are the same seeds that are being used to grow valerian all over the world. So we decided to have a look at those pink flowered valerians, and we did. And we found they had no phytochemical profile. That was what we wanted for the herb or botanical valerian when you put it in a supplement. So we actually went through and handpicked all the pink flowered plants out of this field so that we could collect pure seed that had the chemical compound that we want for valerian when we're going to be using it in the variety of ways we use it. So growing gives us a chance to watch, and watching gives us a chance to learn and observe, and from that, it helps us do a better job at what we do with growing it. You can see some over on the far side, we've got lemon balm. It's a very popular herb. Many people use it to support sleep and to support their mood and their cognitive function. Over here we have ashwagandha. Ashwagandha being one of the main herbs and as an adaptogen, a really high popular herb right now. One of the things about ashwagandha is that the flea beetles want to eat it. So these tiny little black beetles eat it. And so what we do here is we use a variety. We use caterpillars, we use Typhia wasps, we use certain types of bacillus sprays, but a variety of organic methods to control that. The Typhia wasps actually go in and eat certain types of larvae that attack some of our plants, the passion flower, and the ashwagandha. So we've learned of different ways that we can manage them without having to use chemicals or pesticides. Sourcing is huge, as I said, and that's what drove us to want to grow. But we can't grow everything. We can't grow all the things we use in our products. So we have partner farms. Bill Chofie, who is pictured here on the left in that picture, or on the right if you're looking at it, is our sourcer. He goes all over the world. It's not good enough to just get a sample of dandelion leaf in the mail and test it and say, we want it. He wants to know the people who are growing it. He wants to know where they're growing it and how it looks. He just came back from India, and boy, the stories he told us about the organic turmeric farms he went to visit, probably not what we would have thought of it as organic turmeric farms. Yet, that's what comes out is an organic turmeric root. But when we go and look at the farm, we don't necessarily see those practices. Here, you can see he's with the Peruvian who works with the maca fields. When all the maca issues went down, we had a relationship with our maca growers to grow 5 acres for us. And when the Chinese came in and bought up the maca in Peru with cash, our people didn't sell those 5 acres because we had a relationship with them. We had a relationship about, we weren't backing down, we brought to their community. And that's one of the things about Gaia is that if we're going to be sourcing material from a community, we want to give back, whether that's giving school or dental. What we've done in China is we've worked with a group called Golden Courage, which is a group that works with children who are orphaned in China, brings them to the Schizandra farm. They go a high school education. They graduate from that, they get dental care so they can have the Golden Courage smile and confidence, and they learn how to work in the Schizandra field. If they want to be Schizandra workers, they can do that, or they can go on to college. They have that high school education. So those are ways that we're always looking to see how can we work with the community at large that we're working with. The lower picture, the wild harvesters, there are some plants that will never grow in cultivation well. And so that means that wild harvesting is going to be how we get those plants. You want harvesters that understand that it means that we manage them. We're going to steward these plants. We can't go in there and just harvest it all dry because they won't be there for the next year and the year after that. So these two harvesters, Doug Elliott and his son, are out harvesting in Appalachia and harvesting areas that they've harvested for years and managed. And so for us, it becomes really important that we do that both globally as well as regionally. So we reach out to many, many North Carolina farmers, as well as I said, we have China partner farms, we have partner farms in Italy and Peru and Vanuatu. When the hurricanes came through Vanuatu, what did they need to get them their economical sources back up? Was farming equipment. That's what we sent down, was farming equipment. Is they wanted to get back to grow their kava. And so we want to give them that opportunity to do that, and hence we still get our kava. Okay, so lab validation is extremely important. We have an amazing lab, and in that lab we're looking for purity. So that means if a plant comes in, whether it comes off our farm or it comes from Italy or it comes from Peru, it gets tested. It gets tested when it comes in, it gets tested after it's been processed, and several times along the way. If it doesn't meet specs, even if it comes off our farm, we don't take it, and we are known for that. Don't send us a sample of your grade A and then send us a whole big batch of grade B, because it's very likely you'll get your grade B batch back. Integrity. Integrity is extremely important. We do testing. We have worked very hard to get our raw material DNA analysis up and running. And the two men in our company who have really worked on that went and presented to the FDA on DNA analysis testing. It is not a testing material that's used for product. It's a testing method that's actually used for the raw plant or the raw material. And that's an important piece. We're not testing product, we're testing raw material. And then potency. Looking at potency, and Gaia has actually developed a form of condensing their extracts. So typically with our extracts, we'll extract an ethanol in order to get a good phytochemical profile of all the chemistry of the plant. And if it's going in the phytocap, the alcohol is going to be condensed off. It's going to be less than 0.01% alcohol, and it's going to be replaced with some sunflower lecithin and some glycerin, and that's what keeps those phytocaps stable because we've taken the alcohol out. So potency it means that we can look at biomarkers, we can also look at validation and call out potency by either using a biomarker or if we have a scientific test that's been done. Alrighty, so, is that all the pictures I had? Let me just say a couple more things. So the other thing about lab validation that I think is important is that we look at heavy metals and we look at bacteria and funguses and viruses or any other types of microbes that could be there. One of the things about heavy metals is that there are some plants that collect heavy metals, like maca. We can't get maca free from heavy metals. There's always going to be a certain amount of lead in maca. It's the way that it grows and takes that from the soil. So overall, we tend to have our own limits for heavy metals. We don't use FDA limits because we don't necessarily think that FDA limits are as safe as we'd like. We basically have a zero tolerance. And so we look very hard to make sure that all of our herbs can actually find and show that zero tolerance. All right, so next is a little bit about our products. So these three products that I'm going to be talking about today, HPA access products, there's daytime maintenance, homeostasis, and sleep cycle. These are really based on looking at adaptogens and the effects of adaptogens on the body. One of the things that pushed Gaia and myself was that I did 25 years of clinical practice. Many tests on testing the HPA access and many lab results to look at the results after using herbs. And so it was from my experience that I said, let's differentiate our adaptogens, because adaptogens bring secondary qualities which could actually help to influence our 24-hour circadian cycle. And our 24-hour circadian cycle is influenced by daylight and by hormone and it influences our endocrine system, our immune system, and even our peripheral clocks, all the way down to each organ has its own rhythm. And so looking at adaptogens and seeing how can adaptogens support that rhythm. We have adaptogens that are more calming, that might actually be useful in the evening time with restoring and revitalizing, which is the natural cycle that the body wants to do. We have other adaptogens that help with our physiological output and helps with supporting the energy and the work that our muscles might do. So we might actually use those kinds of adaptogens in the day. We're not using our muscles at night, we're sleeping. And during sleep, we revitalize. So revitalizing adaptogens work well in sleep. Energizing adaptogens work really well during the day. And because cortisol, which is a hormone that's a part of your endocrine system, is the active hormone during the day, and it goes quiet at night when the nighttime circadian rhythm comes out, and melatonin comes out. So people use melatonin because they want to help support their sleep. And we all know that when cortisol becomes irregular and we have high cortisol in the evening time, most people have complaints about, the quality of their sleep. And so we looked at separating that. I'm going to talk about that. So adaptogens, if you don't know what an adaptogen is, and adaptogens were coined after many, many years of research in Russia, and they were coined as a plant or a herb that helps to support the body's natural response to stress. So it helps with making sure that the body can respond to stress in a healthy way so that it's not necessarily going to insult us. So it increases the body's resistance to adverse influences. It's not specific by action. It can be a wide range of influences. It could be a physiological stress. It could be a biological stress. It could be an emotional stress or a spiritual stress. They all tend to go in the same physiological response in the body. So if I'm worried about, my child and I just, turned my ankle on the cobblestone, the stress response for that is the same in the physiological body, even though I have different triggers. So having an overall normalizing effect is one of the things that adaptogens do, is it very helps to normalize the effect or bring in homeostasis, because that's what the body wants. The body always wants to go back to balance, wants to find that balance and make sure that everything within the body finds that balance. So adaptogens help us to adapt to daily life. We call something, when we have a lot of stress during our day, we call that the allostatic load. What's your load of their stress? And if it's too much, it bears down on us. And then we don't function well. We don't remember well. We don't focus well. We're not as patient with our children. We're maybe not as patient with our partner. But, it ekes in there. And one of the things that adaptogens does is to help us to manage that stress so it can't eke in there. And so it helps us to not have those effects. And stress can affect us in multiple ways. It can affect our immune system. It can affect our endocrine system, our cardiovascular system, our digestive system. I mean, I'm sure you all have your own ways that you've experienced stress in your life. So adaptogens, if we were to put it in point, they help to support the body's healthy response to stress. They promote a healthy immune function. One of the things that happens is that stress and breakdown of that HPA axis will actually trigger immune response that's really not a healthy response. It's actually a maladaptive response. Adaptogens help to maintain healthy blood sugar levels, and the healthy blood sugar levels and the insulin, the hormone for that, is connected with cortisol. So when cortisol starts to misbehave, it's going to say, hey, insulin, come on over here and let's make some mischief. And that's exactly what happens. And so that's why you have glucose. If your glucose drops in the afternoon, at 3 in the afternoon, you get a low blood sugar. What does that do in your body? It sets off an alarm. Stress, alarm, alarm, alarm. And your body says, uh-oh, I'm in fight, flight. And really, it has to do with glucose. You didn't really have a stress. Nobody came in here and, challenged you. But internally, it created that stress. So if you go more than 3 hours, 4 hours without eating, between breakfast and lunch and dinner and so forth, you'll have drops in your blood sugar. And every time it drops, it sets the alarm off for cortisol, which then the body thinks it's under attack. How many times during the day do you need that to happen? And so adaptogens help the body not to feel like it's always under the attack. Helps to maintain healthy cholesterol levels, inflammatory support, and support for mental clarity and focus. And one of the things that you start to see about adaptogens is that they're not just adaptogens. Many times adaptogens also work as cardiovascular tonics or as nervous system tonics or for focus. And so we will see that they have secondary effects. And that's what we've, what should we say, capitalized on in these products, is to really take those different effects and help to drive them at certain times of the day. So in this, you can see what we've done here is we've taken the basic characteristic of adaptogen and looked at where does it fit in physically and emotionally supporting, something like rhodiola, holy basil, schizandra. They're all very supportive to supporting our circadian rhythm, particularly in the daytime. One of the things that rhodiola does is rhodiola actually helps us to maintain and promote good oxygen utilization by our muscular tissues. And so in the day, when we're out there doing our thing, we want our muscle tissues to utilize oxygen. And so rhodiola is, there in that physically and emotionally supporting. Regulating and calming adaptogens and restoring adaptogens. These are adaptogens that help us to calm at night. So we use magnolia and ashwagandha, mimosa bark, or cordyceps. All help to balance the adrenal function and restore the body. Normally, between 2 and 4 in the nighttime, every night you restore your physical restoration and your psychological restoration. You use your first part from like 2 to 3, 3:30, where you're restoring your physical restoration. Second part of restoration is your psychological restoration. So if you don't get that good sleep in there, then you don't have a time to restore your psychological restoration. And you all know that when you're under psychological stress, that eats into the quality of your life. And then lastly, physically and emotionally motivating, things like eleutherococcus or Korean ginseng or rapunticum or licorice. All of these plants help to support the daytime pick-me-up. One of the things that happens is that when you get up in the morning, about a half an hour after rising up, your cortisol reaches its highest level for the whole day. Because cortisol is supposed to. You get up and cortisol says, okay, let's get the heart going, let's get the kidneys going, let's get the GI tract going again. So it wakes the body up and gets it ready for a daytime active day. And so we use plants like rhodiola or like licorice that will actually help to support that, so that somebody who's really sluggish in the morning, and you've been under a lot of stress and now you can't get up very well in the morning, you're really tired and you're thinking about where's that caffeine and can't focus, you might actually use plants like that to actually support your cortisol in the early morning, because that's when it normally would be at its highest. And then you use plants like your ashwagandha in your evening time to quiet your cortisol so that it is not high during a quiet time. And so you'll see, this is a good picture. I should have shown this one first. So this is the circadian rhythm of cortisol. You can see if we look here, we'll start at 6 a.m. Right here, 6 a.m., it's at its highest, and then throughout the day it goes down to become at quieter and quieter, and at its lowest at midnight, and it's when you're sleeping. People who tend to have high cortisol at midnight tend to have more mood issues. So when we're looking at supporting this with the herbs, we are going to be looking, can I go back? Yes. We're going to be looking at supporting through this cycle. So a sleep cycle, and you can see that sleep stimuli and wake stimuli happen for a few hours prior to getting there. So, many times we think that we'll go to sleep in 5 minutes, and that will be that. Well, you get into bed and you don't go to sleep because you haven't done the things to wind down. And that's another reason why we can use these herbs for that. So you can see here that the homeostasis is a formula that's used in the morning time to support that adrenal gland that's really malfunctioning, and that person really feels that in the morning. They have lack of energy, lack of focus, can't wake up well, maybe they're spacey. Daytime, your daytime maintenance is actually a well-rounded formula that can be used during the day, midday, evening. It's kind of the all-round one, and then our night formula. And I just want to look at that a little more quickly. So here in our homeostasis, one of the things that you're going to see here in this formula, this is a short-term formula, and it's for 2 to 3 months. It's really for that person who really feels like they've been, really beat down, like they just don't feel like they have good energy, good focus, good motivation. And so they may use the homeostasis for a couple of months to jumpstart themselves, to get that cortisol back on the normal cycle it should be. And then they'll move from that back to the daytime. Anybody who's under any stress during the day can use the daytime as an ongoing formula. Here also, here you have some pictures of the herbs, and here you're going to see both rhodiola and rapunticum. These are 2 Siberian adaptogens that grow very close to each other in Siberia, and then are traditionally used as what we call spring tonics to, improve one's health and to support the health of coming out of a cold, sluggish time of winter and into the spring. You'll also see that we have licorice root and schizandra here, along with Korean ginseng. So this really is an uplifting formula to get people moving in the day. Our sleep cycle is much more about nighttime, and it's really about restoration. So when you see something like vervain and ashwagandha and lemon balm, which we all grow on the farm, all of those plants actually come right off the farm. These plants, many people think of them as supporting the nervous system and helping with, calming. And one of the other things about those plants is that they're all restoring plants. And as I said earlier, if we don't restore during our nighttime, we don't have a very healthy, well daytime. And it will build on itself. So restoration is extremely important. So this formula, sleep cycle, could be used with daytime. It could also be used with homeostasis. It's a formula that could stand alone for someone who just may have sleep difficulties because of their stress. So they're going to, work with that during their sleep time. It's not a formula that makes you fall asleep. It improves your sleep cycle, which after a period of time, you'll notice that you sleep sounder, you have, less restlessness with that type of thing. It's not going to necessarily take this medicine and you're going to fall right to sleep. No, that's really not what these herbs are about. Okay, and so here we have ashwagandha, magnolia, and albizia, which is mimosa flower. And I really feel like these 3 plants together, when I gave these, when the new products came out, what they do is they give me so many to give to my clients. Well, I picked my 12 hardest menopausal women have issues with sleep big time, and they often don't respond well to medications or hormones, and they can't get their sleep down. So I picked the 12 hardest women I had and gave them this product, and I was very surprised at the response that I got. I was expecting to see maybe 10 to 14 days before I started to see some positive response. Most people found within 3 or 4 days they started to note different things. It might be that, things that they noted or, quality changed, maybe the amount of restlessness, maybe the ability to fall back to sleep quickly after waking up. For myself personally, I found that I didn't clench my jaw. So at nighttime, I wasn't waking up with a tight jaw when I started to take this. So there are a variety of little ways. And then lastly is the daytime, and this is really this is for that person who is, stressed out, but it hasn't necessarily been a real long time, and it hasn't necessarily undermined their health, but they know that stress is a weight that is starting to pull them down, and the daytime maintenance would be that. And so then you can see here we have ashwagandha, rhodiola, some milky oats, holy basil, and schizandra. Rhodiola is organic and comes from Siberia. And then this little chart just gives you a little bit of compare and contrast, so you can kind of see where, and you'll have that on your handouts there. So that can give you a little bit of differentiation of when using these. So that brings me to questions, and before questions, over there, I have a sample for each of you. You can determine which you might like to try. You can't take one of each, but you can certainly take one bottle. So there's the daytime, the PM sleep cycle, and the homeostasis over there. So I do hope that you'll take a sample and either gift it to somebody who you might think it would be useful for, or utilize it yourself and see what you think. Do I have some questions?
So are herbs, generally, are herbs fat soluble or are they water soluble? Thus, would you take these kind of formulas with food or away from meals?
That's a really good question. It depends on the compound. So there are many compounds in a plant that are fat soluble, and in that same plant there can be water soluble. It's often why we'll use in our formulas, you might actually see that we use some supercritical extracts as well as ethanol extracts. The supercritical helps to bring out the lipid soluble forms and make them more absorbable. If they're not in supercritical form, taking the plant with the meal will help to absorb that. But in herbalism in general, there are certain times you take plants. Like if you were going to impact somebody's respiratory system, their lungs, you need to take that plant on an empty stomach in order for it to have a reflex reaction in the mucous membranes of the gut to respond in the lungs. If you take it with food, you miss that. So there are some very specific things, and if you notice on our turmeric products actually have different times. Some are taken with meal, some it's actually between, based on just that purpose.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is the farm also GMO free? I see a lot of organic stuff.
Yes, we are. We're going for that. It's been a 2-year process for us for the GMO piece, but we've just changed from soy lecithin to the sunflower lecithin because we couldn't get guarantee on that. And soon we will be able to put that on our label. And it is a good question because I think a lot of people are looking at going with non-GMO as being quite secure and assuming that organic kind of goes with that.
Are any of the formulations counterindicated for nursing?
Well, all of the formulations would be specific in the sense that if you were like the Homeostasis product, that product would be fine for a nursing mom if she was 6 months along. So if she was out, her baby was 6 months. For babies under 3 months, I would certainly say no. And then generally, all of these formulas would be okay, but I would certainly say, talk to your practitioner about it and make sure that it's, it's fine. But many of those individual herbs, like rhodiola, is a herb that's traditionally been used in fertility, as ashwagandha, the same thing. Holy basil is a galactagogue. So we know that supports breastfeeding and breast milk production, that type of thing. Yeah. Yes, Dan.
Can you talk real briefly about your Meet Your Herbs program?
Yes. Oh, thank you. We didn't put a slide up there. We do have a Meet Your Herbs program. And if you look at the side, this may not have it on it. There should be a lot number. I don't have my glasses. Yes, there is. And under you can read it there. It says Meet Your Herbs, and you would go there to the website, put in that lot number under Meet Your Herbs, and up will come your product. You can then look at each individual herb. You can actually go to the farm map and see where those herbs. So if you looked up daytime maintenance, you could see holy basil, and you could go and see that it was being grown on field 30, 42, and 52, and how much was being grown. You could go and look at what other products it's being used for, and there's a lot of information. Like if you want to study herbs, you should read our website, and you should read our Meet Your Herbs, because there's a lot of good information that we've put on there just for that. And also, sometimes it's really nice to, you look at those bottles all the time. You're like, how alive is that? So you go on there and Meet Your Herbs, and you see these huge fields of echinacea, or you start to see, the little pink tops of the blossoms there. You start to see that, and you realize, wow, they're really doing this. They just didn't go online and get some nice photo stock somewhere. We did this, We have a poet come and write poems about it. I mean, we do kids' pumpkin day and kids, herb walk on the farm. Part of our wellness program. If you're part of our wellness program, you can go for a farm walk with Rick once a month and get a point towards your wellness. So there's a lot that the farm can offer in that sense, and that's the best way, unless you can come and visit us, to actually get a bird's eye view of the farm. Is on Meet Your Herbs. You'll see great pictures of the farm and some nice videos of how and what we're working for. All right, well, you guys are pretty laid back. Thank you. And if you ever have a chance to come by the farm, or you know you're going to be in North Carolina, you should contact us. We would love to be able to share that with you.
Thank you.